The conference room went silent when Victoria stood up and pointed directly at me. Effective immediately, James Hartford is terminated from his position as operations director. His replacement will be Andrew Sullivan, who clearly understands the vision of this company better than my husband ever did. 23 executives watched as the CEO of Hartford and Associates, my wife of 12 years, ended my career with the same cold efficiency she used to close business deals. But what she didn't know was that the silver-haired man sitting in the back corner, the one she'd dismissed as just another consultant, was about to change everything. His name was Robert Fairchild, and the whisper he gave me as I packed my office would transform my destruction into her worst nightmare. My name is James Hartford. I'm 41 years old, and until 10:47 this morning, I was the operations director at Hartford and Associates, a commercial real estate firm my wife Victoria and I built together from nothing. We started with $50,000 in savings and a shared dream. 12 years later, we had 200 employees, offices in 4 states, and annual revenue pushing $80 million. But somewhere between our first million and our first Forbes profile, Victoria stopped being my partner and started being my boss. If you're going through something similar, or if this story resonates with you, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button right now. Drop a comment below telling me what you think should happen next, and smash that like button. Your engagement helps this channel grow and helps me bring you more real stories about real people facing impossible situations. Now, let's get back to the worst day of my professional life. The Monday morning meeting started normally enough. 23 executives gathered in our top floor conference room, the one with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Seattle. Victoria sat at the head of the table in her signature navy suit, her dark hair pulled back in that severe bun she wore when she meant business. I was 3 seats down on her left, reviewing the quarterly numbers on my tablet. Andrew Sullivan sat directly across from me. 28 years old, Harvard MBA, hired 6 months ago as Victoria's executive assistant. He'd been efficient, professional, maybe a little too eager to please, but I'd written that off as ambition. Young guy trying to prove himself in a competitive firm. What I hadn't noticed was how often he and Victoria had closed-door meetings, how she started coming home later, how her phone was always face down now. "Before we begin the quarterly review," Victoria said, her voice carrying that authoritative tone she'd perfected over the years, "I want to address something that's been impacting our company culture." I looked up from my tablet. This wasn't on the agenda. "For the past year," Victoria continued, "we've been experiencing communication breakdowns between operations and executive leadership. Decisions have been delayed. Opportunities have been missed. And frankly, the disconnect has cost us millions in potential revenue." Around the table, executives shifted uncomfortably. I felt my stomach tighten. This felt rehearsed. "Victoria," I said carefully, "if there are concerns about operations, we should discuss them privately first." She didn't even look at me. "There's nothing left to discuss, James. The decision has been made." Andrew leaned forward slightly, and I caught something in his expression. Not surprise. Anticipation. "As of today," Victoria announced, "James Hartford is being terminated from his position as operations director." The room went dead silent. I heard someone gasp, felt 24 pairs of eyes turn toward me. "You're firing me?" The words came out flat, emotionless, because my brain was still trying to process what was happening. "This isn't personal," Victoria said, finally meeting my eyes. "It's business. You've become a liability to this company's growth." A liability. The company I'd built alongside her, the operations department I'd structured from scratch, the relationships with contractors and vendors that I'd cultivated over a decade. "Victoria, this is insane," I said, standing up. "You can't just—" "I can and I am," she cut me off. "Your severance package will be generous. 6 months' salary. But I need you to clean out your office today. Security will assist you." Andrew was trying not to smile. I could see it in the corner of his mouth, that barely suppressed satisfaction. "And who's taking over operations?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Victoria gestured toward Andrew. "Andrew Sullivan has been training for this transition for the past 3 months. He understands the direction I want to take this company. He's aligned with my vision in ways you never were." 3 months. She'd been planning this for 3 months. Training my replacement while smiling at me over dinner. Discussing strategy with him while telling me she was working late. This is unbelievable, I said, gathering my tablet and papers. Absolutely unbelievable. James, one of the other executives started, but Victoria held up her hand. The decision is final. James, please leave the conference room. We have business to conduct. I walked out in a daze. Behind me, I heard Victoria's voice resume its normal cadence, already moving on to the next agenda item like she hadn't just destroyed her husband's career in front of his colleagues. The hallway felt longer than usual. My office was on the same floor, corner suite with windows facing the water. I'd picked out the furniture myself, the desk where I'd closed our first major deal, the couch where Victoria and I used to strategize late into the night before we could afford a full staff. I was shoving files into a box when someone knocked on my open door. The man who entered was maybe 65, silver hair, expensive suit, the kind of presence that commanded attention, without demanding it. I'd seen him in the conference room, sitting quietly in the back, one of the consultants Victoria had brought in to evaluate operations. Or so I'd thought. "Mr. Hartford," he said, extending his hand. "Robert Fairchild." I shook his hand automatically. "If you're here to evaluate the mess Victoria just made, you're welcome to it." He smiled slightly. "I'm not here to evaluate anything. I'm here to offer you an opportunity." I laughed bitterly. "Unless that opportunity involves time travel so I can go back and see this coming, I'm not interested." Robert closed my office door and sat in one of my chairs without being invited. "I run a private equity firm. We specialize in acquiring companies that are being mismanaged and restructuring them properly. I've been watching Hartford and Associates for 6 months." "Great. So you can watch Victoria run it into the ground with her new golden boy." "That's exactly what's going to happen," Robert said calmly. "Andrew Sullivan is impressive on paper. Harvard credentials, excellent presentation skills, but he doesn't know commercial real estate. He knows theory. You know practice." I stopped packing and looked at him. "What's your point?" "My point is that Victoria just made the biggest mistake of her professional life, and I'm going to help you make sure she knows it." Something in his tone made me pause. This wasn't sympathy. This was strategy. "Keep talking," I said. Robert pulled out a folder from his briefcase. "Hartford and Associates is worth approximately $80 million on paper, but that valuation is heavily dependent on your vendor relationships, your contractor network, and your operational expertise. Without you, those relationships become unstable." "She'll figure it out." "No, she won't. Because in about 6 weeks, 3 of your biggest contractors are going to experience scheduling conflicts that prevent them from fulfilling their commitments to Hartford and Associates. Projects will be delayed. Clients will be unhappy. The company's reputation will take a hit." I stared at him. "You're talking about sabotage." "I'm talking about market forces. Contractors are free agents. They can choose who they work with. And many of them have been unhappy with Victoria's management style for years. They stayed because of you. Now you're gone. Even if that happens, Victoria will just find new contractors." Robert smiled. "Not if those contractors are already committed to competing projects. Projects managed by a new firm that's about to enter the Seattle market. A firm that has the operational expertise Victoria just threw away." The pieces started falling into place. "You want me to start a competing company? I want to fund you starting a competing company. My firm will provide the capital. You provide the expertise and the relationships. We launch in 6 weeks, right when Hartford and Associates starts experiencing its contractor problems. We poach their unhappy clients. We build something better than what you and Victoria created together." I sat down slowly. "This is revenge." "This is business," Robert corrected. "Victoria chose to make this personal by humiliating you in front of your colleagues. But the business response is to compete, and competition is perfectly legal." "Why me? Why now?" "Because I've watched you operate for 6 months. You're good at what you do. Better than Victoria, frankly. She's good at closing deals and managing money. But you're good at the actual work of making projects succeed. That's more valuable." "And what's in it for you?" 60% equity for my firm's investment, 40% for you. But you run operations completely. No interference. We provide capital and strategic support. You build the company." I looked at the box of files on my desk, then at the door Victoria had walked through less than an hour ago, then back at Robert. "She trained Andrew for 3 months, I said slowly. "She planned this." "She did. And now you're going to plan something better." I picked up my phone and started scrolling through my contacts. 10 years of relationships. Contractors who'd told me privately they couldn't stand Victoria's micromanaging. Vendors who'd complained about her negotiation tactics. Clients who'd specifically requested to work with me instead of other project managers. "I'll need an attorney," I said. "A good one." Robert pulled out a business card. "I have 3 on retainer. All of them specialize in non-compete agreements and employment law. Hartford and Associates has a non-compete, which is probably unenforceable given how broadly it's written. My attorneys will review it tonight." I looked at the card, then at Robert. "When do we start?" "We started the moment you walked out of that conference room. Now we just make it official." For the first time since Victoria had announced my termination, I felt something other than shock and betrayal. I felt purpose. "One condition," I said. "When this works, when we succeed, I want Victoria to know exactly why she failed." Robert stood and extended his hand again. "Mr. Hartford, that's exactly what I'm counting on." The apartment I moved into was temporary, a furnished place in Capitol Hill, close enough to downtown, but far enough from the house Victoria and I had shared in Queen Anne, the house I'd helped design, the house where we'd planned to raise kids before Victoria decided her career was more important than starting a family. I spent the first week in a haze, meeting with Robert's attorneys, reviewing my non-compete clause, which turned out to be exactly as unenforceable as Robert predicted, setting up the corporate structure for what we were calling Fairchild Hartford Properties. The name was deliberate. Putting Hartford second sent a message. This wasn't just about me. This was about building something better. By week 2, I started making calls. Casual conversations with contractors I'd worked with for years. Lunch meetings with vendors. Coffee with former clients who'd expressed frustration with Hartford and Associates' recent direction. "James, what happened?" Tom Brennan asked over lunch. He ran the largest commercial construction firm in Seattle. We'd worked together on dozens of projects. "Victoria decided Andrew Sullivan was a better fit for operations," I said, keeping my voice neutral. Tom set down his fork. "The kid with the Harvard degree? The one who talks a good game but couldn't run a job site if his life depended on it? That's the one? Jesus, James, that's insane. That's business, apparently. But I'm not sitting around feeling sorry for myself. I'm starting a new firm, Fairchild Hartford Properties. We're going to do commercial real estate development the right way." Tom leaned back in his chair. "You need contractors? I need partners. People who understand that projects succeed because of relationships, not just contracts. When do you launch?" 6 weeks. We're lining up initial projects now." Tom pulled out his phone. "Send me whatever paperwork you need. You've always been straight with me, James. I'd rather work with you than deal with Victoria's power trips." That conversation repeated itself a dozen times over the next 2 weeks. Contractors who'd been frustrated with Victoria's management style. Vendors who'd felt undervalued. Clients who'd specifically asked for me on their projects only to be told I was no longer available. By week 4, Fairchild Hartford Properties had commitments from 5 major contractors, 3 key vendors, and 2 clients who were considering pulling their projects from Hartford and Associates to work with us instead. Robert called me into his downtown office to review the progress. "You've assembled an impressive network in a month," he said, reviewing the spreadsheet I'd prepared. "Better than I expected. These are people who've been waiting for an alternative to Victoria's approach. I'm just giving them one." "Have you heard anything from her?" Radio silence. She hasn't called, hasn't texted. It's like 12 years of marriage just disappeared. Robert nodded. "She's probably assuming you're licking your wounds somewhere. Hasn't occurred to her that you might be building a competitor. When should we announce?" "Let's wait until she starts having contractor problems. Should be any day now based on what I'm hearing." He was right. 3 days later, my phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello? James, it's Linda Chang, one of the project managers at Hartford and Associates. I know I probably shouldn't be calling you, but we've got a situation." "What kind of situation?" "Thompson Construction just pulled out of the Madison Street project. No explanation. Just said they couldn't commit to the timeline anymore. Victoria's freaking out because that project is supposed to break ground in 2 weeks." "That's unfortunate," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "It gets worse. Brennan Industries told us this morning they're reevaluating their contract for the Bellevue expansion, and Martinez Electrical is suddenly booked solid for the next 6 months. 3 contractors. The exact 3 I'd been talking to over the past month. Sounds like Victoria needs to work on her relationships with contractors, I said. James, everyone knows she screwed you over. And now the people you built relationships with are walking away. You knew this would happen, didn't you? I didn't answer directly. Linda, if you're calling to see if I can fix Victoria's problems, that ship has sailed. I'm calling because I want to know if you're hiring. Half the operations team is looking for an exit strategy. Working with Andrew is a nightmare. Send me your resume. We're launching Fairchild Hartford Properties next week. We'll need experienced people. After I hung up, I texted Robert. It's happening. His response came immediately. Time to announce. The press release went out on a Monday morning. Former Hartford & Associates operations director launches competing firm. The Seattle Business Journal picked it up first, then the regional papers. By noon, it was trending on local business Twitter. My phone exploded with calls. Reporters wanting comments. Former colleagues wanting information. Contractors wanting to confirm the news. But the call I was waiting for came at 2:47 p.m. Victoria. What the hell are you doing? Her voice was shaking with rage. Starting a business. Same thing we did 12 years ago, remember? You can't do this, James. You signed a non-compete. I had my attorneys review it. Turns out it's unenforceable. Something about being overly broad and restrictive. You should have your legal team look into that. This is revenge. You're sabotaging me. I'm competing with you. There's a difference. You taught me that. Business isn't personal, remember? My contractors are walking away. My projects are falling apart. Then maybe you should have kept your operations director instead of replacing him with someone who doesn't know the difference between a load-bearing wall and a partition. Silence. Then, I'm going to destroy you. You already tried that, Victoria. Didn't work out the way you planned, did it? She hung up. I sat there for a moment, feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Not happiness exactly, but satisfaction. The kind that comes from proving your worth after someone discounts it. The next 6 months were brutal in the best possible way. Fairchild Hartford Properties grew faster than even Robert had projected. We poached 4 of Hartford & Associates' biggest clients. 3 more came to us organically, drawn by our reputation for operational excellence. Victoria tried to fight back. She hired 2 new operations managers. Neither lasted more than 3 months. She tried to poach my contractors by offering higher rates. Most of them turned her down, telling her directly they'd rather work with someone who respected them. Andrew Sullivan, her golden boy, turned out to be exactly what I'd suspected. Great at presentations, terrible at execution. 2 major projects fell apart under his management. Clients sued. Victoria had to settle out of court for millions. By month 8, Hartford & Associates' revenue had dropped by 30%. Their stock price was falling. Board members were asking questions about Victoria's decision-making. That's when she showed up at my office unannounced. Security called up from the lobby. Mr. Hartford, there's a Victoria Hartford here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment. I smiled. Send her up. She walked in looking different. Older somehow. The confidence that had always defined her was gone, replaced by something that looked like desperation. James, she said, standing in my doorway. Victoria, this is unexpected. I need to talk to you. About what? How you fired me in front of 23 executives? Or how you'd been training my replacement for 3 months while pretending we were partners? She closed the door and sat down without being invited. I made a mistake. One mistake? Try several. Andrew was a mistake. Firing you was a mistake. I was wrong. And? She looked at me with something that might have been genuine regret. I want you to come back. Name your price. COO position. Equity stake. Whatever you want. I leaned back in my chair. Victoria, you don't get it. I don't want to come back. I'm building something better than what we had. James, please. The board is threatening to remove me if I can't turn things around. The company is failing. The company you chose to run without me is failing. There's a difference. So this was all revenge? You wanted to watch me suffer? No, this was about proving my value. Something you apparently forgot after 12 years. She stood up, anger flashing in her eyes. You're enjoying this. I'm enjoying building a successful company. If your failure is part of that story, that's on you, not me. What about our marriage? What marriage? You ended that when you chose Andrew Sullivan over me. Or maybe before that. Maybe when you stopped seeing me as a partner and started seeing me as an employee, you could dismiss. Victoria walked to the door, then turned back. I loved you, James. Past tense. That says everything. After she left, I sat in my office for a long time. There was no satisfaction in her suffering. No joy in watching the company we built together fall apart. But there was vindication. The kind that comes from proving that success isn't about who has the corner office or the CEO title. It's about who does the actual work. Robert called an hour later. I heard Victoria visited. Word travels fast. She made you an offer? She did. I turned it down. Good. Because I have a better offer. Hartford and Associates board just called me. They want to discuss a buyout. I sat up straight. They want to sell? They want to merge. Fairchild Hartford Properties acquires Hartford and Associates. You become CEO. Victoria gets a severance package and walks away. What's the price? $40 million. We'd have to bring in additional investors, but the combined company would be worth twice that within 3 years. I thought about it. Thought about the company Victoria and I had built together. The dreams we'd shared. The future we'd planned before ambition and ego got in the way. Make the offer, I said. But I want one condition. Name it. Victoria doesn't get to stay on in any capacity. No consulting role, no advisory position. She walks away completely. Done. I'll have the attorneys draft the paperwork. The acquisition took 3 months to finalize. Victoria fought it initially, but the board overruled her. They'd lost confidence in her leadership. The company was hemorrhaging money. The merger was their only option. I met with Victoria one last time to sign the final paperwork. We sat across from each other in a conference room with our respective attorneys present. I hope you're happy, she said, signing her name on the last page. I'm successful. There's a difference. You destroyed everything we built. No, you destroyed everything we built when you forgot we were supposed to be partners. I just built something better without you. She stood up, gathered her papers, and walked out without another word. 6 months later, the merged company was thriving. We'd retained most of Hartford and Associates' good employees. Let go of the dead weight. Restructured operations. Built something stronger than either company had been separately. I was in my new corner office, reviewing quarterly projections, when Robert knocked on my open door. Got a minute? Always. He sat down with a satisfied expression. I thought you should know. Andrew Sullivan just filed for unemployment. Apparently nobody in the industry will hire him after what happened at Hartford and Associates. And Victoria? Last I heard, she's consulting for a mid-size firm in Denver. Nothing close to what she had here. I nodded slowly. No satisfaction, no vindication. Just the quiet certainty that actions have consequences. You know what's funny? I said. If she'd just treated me like a partner instead of an employee, none of this would have happened. We'd probably still be running the company together. Some people forget that loyalty is a two-way street, Robert said. Or maybe some people never understood it in the first place. Robert stood to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, I've been doing this for 30 years. I've seen a lot of executives rise and fall. Victoria's mistake wasn't ambition, it was arrogance. She thought she could succeed without the person who'd built the foundation. You proved her wrong. After he left, I looked around my office. The desk Victoria had sat behind in that other conference room. The windows overlooking the same Seattle skyline. The success that came not from revenge or spite, but from simply doing what I'd always done best. Building, creating, making things work. My phone buzzed with a text from Linda Chang, who was now my director of operations. Brennan just signed on for 3 more projects. We're going to need to hire more staff. I smiled and typed back. Start recruiting. Let's build something that lasts. Because that's what this had always been about. Not destroying Victoria, not proving a point, just building something real, something solid, something that succeeded because it was built on partnership and respect instead of ego and power plays. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. This story proves that sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's just success. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and drop a comment telling me what you think should happen next. Should James reach out to Victoria? Should he just move on completely? Let me know in the comments. And remember, in business and in life, how you treat people matters. because the person you dismiss today might be the person who builds your competition tomorrow.